welcome to the BA Brew. I'm Lisa.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Jonathan.
Today we're going to talk about the importance of developing positive and effective habits in work and in life, actually. Hopefully we can share some insights with you. Kate, it's your debut on the BA Brew. Would you like to start with anything? Have you got anything you'd like to share with us in terms of habits perhaps that you've overcome in the past?
I guess one of my biggest habits overcoming was reaching for the crisps. So instead of getting started on a meaty piece of work, going to the cupboard, reaching for a bag of crisps, can't possibly start that stakeholder map because I haven't eaten my crisps yet. That's probably one of my big ones that I've overcome.
Okay, I understand you've got some quite intense views on crisps as well. Is that right?
I have. We had a slight discussion before the BA Brew around ready salted crisps because they are absolutely the top of my list, much to the disgust of some of the other people on the brew.
That's it. Ready salted. It's not what I expected to say. If somebody said to me, Kate, what crisps do you think Kate likes? It's not the thing that springs to mind, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's quite a surprising choice.
I would have gone for something kind of a bit more Worcester sauce or something kind of a bit spicy maybe, but not ready salted. I don't know. Is there a crisp personality?
Quite possibly, but it's interesting that you see me as being a Worcester sauce fan. Fan. No, plain all the way.
What about you, Jonathan? What's your favourite?
Prawn cocktail's my favourite, and I know it's a controversial choice for some.
That's another. That's another one I wouldn't have expected.
Yeah.
I've put more salt and vinegar myself, but again, like I say, controversial.
I've done quite a lot of research in this area, and I can confirm that ready salted is.
You've been rating crisp, Kate. Is that what you're saying? Rating, not eating them. How about you, Jonathan? Have you got any positive, perhaps negative habits that became positive over time?
I'm going to link this tentatively to crisps, and one of the things that I've tried to do is to stop eating crisps, which I find quite difficult. So I've cut them out of my diet for the last good 6 months or so. So I was in the habit of having a packet of crisps with a sandwich at lunch. And so what I've done is I've swapped that out for an apple. So I quite enjoy a pink lady apple with my lunch. I still get the crispiness and the enjoyment, but it's not a packet of crisps. And that habit's taken a while to break, but I'm now out of the habit of going to the crisp cupboard. And I feel kind of, I don't know, a little bit of a sense of achievement as a result of being able to break that habit. But it has taken quite a lot of willpower to it. And then at times, and I'll share kettle crisps. There are other brands available. If there's a packet and they're open and I find it really difficult to resist them still. But it's a kind of just a hint at the power of habit. And it's really difficult to break your habits here or to change them, I think.
Was your change there, Jonathan, linked to a particular goal?
I'm doing Couch to 5K, Kate.
Okay.
So I'm attempting to increase my exercise, reduce my negative kind of calorie intake, I suppose. And I think it's linked to working from home a lot and just not being out and moving as much as prior to the pandemic. And so I've just decided, well, what can I do to make my lifestyle a little bit healthier? And that minor change, it's a tiny change, is something that I'm in control of, and I've been able to just about master it until I see the bowl of kettle chips or chili Doritos. Those ones are difficult to resist as well, I will admit.
I think that's key point that you're raising is around it can potentially be more, you can be more successful in changing your habits if they're anchored to a particular goal. So actually it gives you that focus. And when you're trying to sort of become aware of, whether a habit that you have is unhelpful or helpful, it's useful to do that in relationship to a future state that you're after. So actually, you look at, okay, I want to get fitter. That's your goal. Okay, well, what are the habits that you have around that you find useful and that help you achieve that goal? And what are the habits that you have that actually hinder you? and then actually being able to look at those unhelpful habits and say, oh, what could I do to change those? So it's that initial bit of self-awareness. So having a goal, self-awareness of what your current habits are, deciding whether those are helpful or unhelpful, and grabbing those unhelpful ones and saying, okay, what am I going to do with these? I need to change them in some way, or, and I think it started with Charles Duhigg, I think is how you pronounce his surname. Yep. In his book, and I think James Clear has sort of evolved it, but they talk about this idea of a habit loop. So it was originally 3, and then I think James Clear added another sort of part of the process, and as BAs we love a bit of process. So the first part is a cue, so it's all about like what triggers that particular habit. So for you it would have been lunchtime, so there's a time involved, would have been in your kitchen, who are you with, what happens, what emotions you might be thinking at that time. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I'm bored. Any of those sorts of things. And that's your cue. And then you go into your craving of, ooh, what do I want? I could have those crisps. And that's when you start to think like, I've got a real desire for that end result and that reward. So you get like a bit of an emotional response then to your cue. And then you have the response itself, or the routine or the habit, which is ripping open that bag of already salted crisps. That might just be the way that I eat them. So delicately opening your packet, I imagine, for you, Jonathan. Putting them around as red juice. Wow. So that's your habit, and then your reward is whatever whatever you get following eating those crisps. So satiety, that's how you say it, or the gratification that you get basically for fulfilling that habit. And it's interesting because your brain actually then creates neural pathways that associates all of those things together. And so that's why habits are really sticky, because your brain is actually going, oh, these things work, I'm going to stick these things together. So it's cue, craving, habit, and then reward. So when you're trying to change a habit, it's quite an involved process, because you have to do something to either change the cue, change the craving, change the habit itself, or change your view of what that reward gives you. So there's quite a lot of sort of neuroscience behind it as well. But James Clear talks about it a lot in his book Atomic Habits, which is really worth a read if you're looking to make changes.
Yeah, I've not read the James Clear work, but I have read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and I just remember it being a really impactful book at the time of reading it, and thinking about, well, what really are the habits that you've got that help you or disadvantage you in some way. And the other book that I'm just going to mention, and I know I've talked about this with Lisa in the past, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is also a book that if you are interested in looking at habits and studying kind of your own habits and where they lead you to, that book as well I'd suggest could be really useful to pick up.
Yeah, that's an excellent one, actually. I think when you recommended it, Jonathan, I bought it and read it last year. Yeah, fantastic book. Really good stuff in there. Really good. I could do with this, actually, Kate. It's some of your sort of theory behind this. For giving up chocolate, because chocolate, unlike crisps, chocolate's my thing.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a lot more calories in chocolate than crisps. So yeah, I might come to you afterwards, and we'll talk about this. How can I reduce my chocolate intake?
Yeah, and I think James Clear offers quite a lot of different ways that you can help with those unhelpful habits. There's things like, habit stacking. So if you want to bring in a new habit, so Jonathan, yours around running, for example, you might stack it on something else that you already do. So it might be, I turn off my computer and my running gear is right next to my desk. So you're then stacking those things together, which then you develop that new cue, craving, reward cycle.
And I've actually done that. What I've done is I've linked it to taking my kids to football practice. So I take my son to football practice, and when I'm getting ready to take him, I put my running gear on, get ready, drop him off. I go for a run. I'm still working my way up, so it only takes me half an hour or so to do my run. And I'm back in time. I can still watch some of his football practice, but I've got that. I'm getting into that habit. I've done it a few times, but I'm trying to build it. and making sure I'm getting that exercise hit. And it's that time in the day where it's convenient. It's sort of time that I'd otherwise it would be wasted, I suppose, in terms of not achieving an outcome. But yeah, it then becomes a lot easier, doesn't it?
I love it. Yeah, that's brilliant. It's a brilliant example.
It's like the whole going to the gym with a friend, isn't it? Because you don't want to let them down, so you do go. Well, actually, when you get there and do your workout, you feel better, don't you? But it's just getting there half the time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've talked a bit. Sorry, Jonathan.
But there's asking for help as well is really useful. So asking your friends and arranging something. But if you're living in a household where, I don't know, there's an abundance of ready salted crisps in the cupboard because someone's gone and done the shopping, I'd imagine that's the kind of thinking ahead and planning. But if you talk to either yourself, if you're the person doing the shopping, or someone else, about planning ahead. So could we change our buying habit? And then you're stacking that negative habit of buying the ready salted crisps. You should switch to prawn cocktail, by the way, Kate. But buying the crisps is a habit as much as eating them. So if you can get to the root cause of the habit and talk about it, reflect on it, and plan ahead of time, you've got a better chance. It's a bit like having the commitment with your friend going to the gym. You're helping each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's linked as well, isn't it, to sort of making things easier or harder. So if it's an unhelpful habit that you've identified, then make it tricky to do. So with your chocolate, Lisa, for example, if that chocolate was on a top shelf inside another container, you've got some thinking time there. Before you just reach for it and eat it, you've actually got to get a chair, get up to the cupboard, unpack it. You might be thinking to yourself, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this, or I don't want to do this.
Don't know, okay. If it was inside a series of Russian dolls, I'll still make my way into it, you know. I'll still be in there.
Okay, you need to stick with Jonathan's don't buy it in the first place. But
just do it, yeah, exactly. If it's in the house, I will find it.
Lisa, could you write yourself a note when you bought it? Write yourself a note, don't eat this.
No, wouldn't work. Don't listen to myself.
But conversely, it works as well the other way, doesn't it? So if your goal, so if you want to turn something in, like make it a bit more positive, so it's actually, I'm going to include some healthy snacks into my day rather than I must not eat the chocolate, because you're almost sometimes, depending on how your brain works, but mine would be like, oh, someone's told me I can't do something, I'm definitely going to do it, even if it's myself.
Yeah.
That actually it's better to add in a goal around, oh, I'm going to include 3 healthy snacks this week. And then you make them available. So the classic example is just making sure that there's, you know, an apple in a fruit bowl in your line of sight, so that's the first thing that you go to. And it's just that reminder then, isn't it? You must have something healthy, you know, and that helps you reach your goal. When you do something towards your goal, you also naturally get a little bit of a dopamine hit because you give yourself a little pat on the back. So all of that reinforces this idea of, oh, this is a good habit for me. So you're more likely to repeat it then.
No, definitely. It depends. I suppose it's all about what works for you as a person, isn't it? So at times gone by where I've tried to cut down on chocolate, for example, it's not really worked because I haven't got the willpower to cut down. Whereas when I've given up for Lent completely, that's worked okay, because there's no question in my mind, can I have some today, can I not? I've just completely given it up and I can't have any. So that's worked pretty well. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose it's working out what works for you, isn't it?
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah, we all respond to things in different ways. It depends what your goal is as well and what the habit is and how long you've had the habit as well. Some of these ones that are really ingrained are more difficult to shift and might need lots of different tactics to change them.
So if we're applying to arrive at to like a work sense then at SBAs, have you got any ideas on habits in your roles in the past as BAs? I mean, Jonathan, have you got any like work-related habits that you've managed to overcome?
One of the habits that I've got, and my colleagues take the mick out of me for this, is that at the start of the working day, I draw a grid, and the grid has all of the tasks that I'm going to do for the day. And I've got the grid lines are important or not important, and urgent and not urgent. It comes from Stephen Covey. And what I do is I draw that, and basically anything that's important and urgent, that's the priority. They're the things I'm going to have to do immediately. And if it's not important, not urgent, I'm not going to spend much time on those things. If it's not important but urgent, I don't particularly like doing those tasks, but sometimes you've got to do them, sometimes you'll delegate. But the trick on that particular grid is to try and spend time in the important but not urgent bucket of work. And this is preventative maintenance. This is where you're building networks. This is where maybe you're exercising, doing some reading, listening to a podcast, for example. It might be important for you to have that relaxation or that knowledge or that engagement, but it's not urgent you do it now. And so, and linking that to habit, that going for the exercise or reading the book or whatever it is that you want to do, it's important, not urgent. You can put that off till tomorrow and there's no real consequence. And that is one of the things that I've done. And I've done it now for something like 5 or 6 years. And I'm quite strict about my time and where I will focus my time. And I make a deliberate decision. If I'm going to focus on something, I'm generally going to focus on it, but it has to be a priority. And the other thing that I'm going to hint at there is that in the prioritization, you've got to have a goal in mind, linking to what Kate, you were saying, the anchor of the goal or the vision. So beginning with the end in mind is also a habit. And I always do that with my business analysis work. What's the target state? Where are we aiming towards here? Is one of the most frequently used questions that I'll use as a business analyst, because I need to know the goal, the outcome, so I can help with getting towards that goal or outcome. And I'm not productive if I don't know where we're headed. I don't know the goal or the vision. And so those things are really kind of ingrained in terms of habits, in terms of the way that I tackle business analysis. So a bit of a long-winded answer there. Sorry, Lisa.
No, it's fantastic just how dedicated you are to doing that list every morning and putting that effort into working out what your, like say, your priorities. It's impressive.
Yeah.
How
long did it take you to sort of, because all of this is behaviour change, and that's the beauty of it, is that if it's just practiced, we can all change our behaviours. That's the good thing about it. How long did it take you to get into that so that it's ingrained in you now that you always start with that?
It comes from that Covey book that we mentioned, and I read that at least 3 times before I started practicing the habits.
Okay.
It isn't an overnight kind of, oh yeah, I'm going to use this. So I read it 3 times over the course of maybe 4 years before I decided I was going to do it. And what changed my behavior was I was presenting at the European Business Analysis Conference on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Business Analysis. And so I had an anchor, I wanted to therefore apply them. And so what I did was I spent 9 months leading up to that presentation practicing the habits every single day. And so that 9 months of prep meant that it became an ingrained habit in terms of my routine. But yeah, good 3-4 years for me to put in place the habit that Covey talked about, because I'd read about it but not applied it. I'd read it and thought, oh, that's good theory, but didn't have the desire to go and do it. But I think a little bit of it was that commitment that I'd committed that I was going to present on this subject, and to be able to present on it with confidence, I wanted to actually use the habit. So I had a bit of an anchor, and the audience, well, they maybe didn't know that I'd had that journey, that I'd sort of had a commitment to them that I would apply the habit, which I think could be useful to think about.
Yeah.
And that probably would have come through actually in your talk, because you can tell when somebody really knows what they're talking about when they've practiced it, when they've lived it. You can tell, can't you? Sure. Yes. I bet it was a really good talk.
I hope so. I did put a lot of effort into it. So.
Well, 9 months, yeah, absolutely. How about you, Kate? Have you got anything from your previous life in a BA role?
I guess mine's a bit more around procrastination. So I have a bit of a habit of procrastination because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I will sort of hold off maybe putting something together and sending it over to stakeholders because I'm like, oh, it doesn't quite do this, or I haven't quite got that bit. So I've had to get more into the habit of sharing early and embracing sort of early feedback. And that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because the reward isn't, like the reward of handing something over to me, finish something that I'm really, really proud of. That's always been my reward, the bit that I crave. So actually being able to hand something over that's like sort of half-hearted, not half-hearted, but half-finished and just in its infancy is quite a hard habit. Has been quite a hard habit for me to break. Yeah.
Kate, I'm going to compliment you now because just last week or the week before, you shared with me an unfinished spreadsheet as a gift. I saw it as a gift
to you,
but it was definitely unfinished. But it's an early process, and you asked for feedback, and we talked about it, and then we moved it forward. But I'd see that as progress because you were comfortable in sharing it, and it. We've moved it forward, I'd hope, and it's still not finished, I know, but
yeah. No, but I think that's important. I think it is, and thank you for the feedback because that's along that journey, it's good sometimes to get that feedback as well. But it definitely helps with this, this collaborative element of business analysis that's so important at the moment. You've got to bring your stakeholders in, you've got to work, you get a much better result if you're collaborative. So actually my helpful habit, I can see the gains that I can get from doing it and from being, from practicing that habit more. But that's something that, it's still a work in progress, obviously, because I'm a perfectionist. I'll probably be working on it for life, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. So that's probably my most recent one, I would think.
Yeah, it's interesting how perfectionism plays into that because I'm very similar. Really uncomfortable if I've not had a chance to finish everything to the sort of level of quality that I want to. I think it's probably a common thing across most BAs, really.
Yeah.
But I'm just conscious of time. Jonathan, have you got anything else that you'd like to touch on before we move on?
I just got one thing that I wanted to, an unhelpful habit that you mentioned in our pre-pod, Lisa, and you said to Kate and I we needed to talk to you about it at 12 minutes 34, and we didn't ask you the unhelpful habit that you've got that you're trying to break. Are you happy to share that?
Oh yes. So years ago, I'm going back quite a few years now, somebody said to me, I'll never forget it, a lady was quite outspoken. She said, "Why are you apologising? You've not done anything wrong." She said, you apologise all day, every day. I remember being taken aback, actually, feeling quite offended because I was just trying to be polite. But actually, I'm so glad now that she pointed it out because on reflection, I was then watching every time I did it. I thought, actually, she's right. Like 90% of the time I'm saying sorry and I don't need to. So I think just being conscious of it, that's how I overcame it. And then I stopped myself. I stopped myself from actually doing it and stopped apologising, unless obviously it was a genuine apology that was needed. So that's probably my biggest one over the years.
And that kind of recognising you're saying, "Oh, I'm sorry to disturb you. I'm sorry for contacting you." That kind of things that we might say or write in an email. You don't need to do it, and it doesn't help. But if you're in the habit of doing it, you might not notice you're in the habit of doing it. It's a bit like me going to the crisp cupboard. I'm not consciously thinking, and that's why habits are so powerful. Because the brain's taking over, you're running on autopilot. You're not consciously thinking, and the trick for me is consciously thinking, and that would be my final thing. So think about your habits and reflect on them. You can change them, you can uplift them, you can move them towards more positive goals and outcomes, but it does require a lot of work. So that's my final thoughts.
Absolutely, no, thank you. That's fantastic. Kate, anything from you?
Mine, the key for me about changing habits is making sure that they are welded to some sort of goal that you're looking for. So being really clear about what you're trying to achieve, and then comes back to that self-awareness. What am I doing at the moment that either helps or hinders? And once you've identified that, that's when you can make change. So,
No, thank you. That's a fantastic top tip, actually. Thank you. No, thank you both. It's been a great brew. Thank you all for watching. If you have any ideas for the brew, please do email us with them at BA Brew at AssistKD.com. Thank you for watching.